Welcome to the Midwest Moguls Show, where we talk all things business, real estate, and entrepreneurship. Let's dive into today's episode and make business enjoyable again. Welcome back to the Midwest Moguls Show. It is Carter here. We are doing a solo episode again today because I wanted to go over, most importantly, and I've been getting a pretty decent amount of questions on this as of lately, scripting, word tracks, everything like that, objection handlers, all these different things. And I think it would be valuable, especially for people who are just getting into the business and wanting to either wholesale or fix and flip properties or hold rentals or whatever the case is. So just going over some basic stuff at the very first part. So when new investors get into the business, generally speaking, they want to target wholesale real estate first because it's the lowest barrier to entry. Now, the concept is quite simple. Execution of the concept is a little bit more difficult. Now, how that conversation at least starts from our side of things is, like, say I'm talking to Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner. So I'd say, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, what we do when we purchase properties, we partner with other investors in the area. Now, ultimately, what this allows us to do is give you the highest price possible. And on your side of things, it doesn't matter to you who the end buyer is on the house as long as you get the price that you're looking for. Chances are they're going to say, no, it doesn't matter to me. Perfect. So what we'll do is we just schedule some times to bring our partners through. And then and it doesn't affect your price. It doesn't affect the terms. It doesn't affect the timelines at all. But it ultimately allows us to give you the highest price possible, makes the most sense for everyone involved in the transaction, and everything will go swimmingly. Now, if you have zero confidence when you're saying any of these things, any of these word tracks, any of these objection handlers, what it'll sound like is there's this it'll sound like a lack of certainty, but it will not come across to the homeowner in the proper tonality. It'll not come across in the proper ways that you're actually hoping for. So what I've done in the past is when homeowners have, that's the wholesaling route. So that's the first thing. Going into the second thing of if you're solving objections, this is when it comes down to, okay, psychologically, what is going on in the homeowner's mind? That they don't trust you or something's happening behind the scenes or whatever the case is. You need to resolve that situation first. If you cannot resolve that first, then you're never going to uncover the true objection. So say someone's like, hey, Carter, I want to think about it. Okay, I totally understand wanting to think about it. Like, let's just put that out there. And then maybe switch topics or whatever. Don't try and solve it right away when they bring that up. Because if they say, I want to think about it, or something's going on in their mind, there is also an unanswered question behind the scenes. Now, the actual word track to solving I want to think about it. Hey, I totally understand you want to think about it. That's not a problem. I can give you a couple days, couple weeks. When should I check back with you, Mr. or Mrs. Homeowner, after you've had enough time to think about it? Okay, 2 weeks. I'll put that in my calendar. Not a problem. And then as you're walking out the door, this is what you'll say. Hey, by the off chance, I know you want to think about things, you want to go through things. Is there something specific that you wanted to think about that I didn't address while I was here? And then you just let it sit. And you wait for their response. And you have to be certain. You have to ask it in a questioning tone. It's like, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, obviously we went over things. Like, is there something that I didn't address while I'm here that you wanted to think through? Or you could phrase it in the way of, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, I totally understand you wanted to think about it. Now, real quick before I go, if when I call you back in 2 weeks or a week from now, if it ends up being a no, hypothetically, like you don't want to sell the house to us or whatever the case is going on, what specifically would you be saying no to? And then you just let it sit there. You let them sit in their thoughts until they give you a response. And you have to shut your mouth. Don't start word vomiting all over the place, because this is what will destroy negotiation tactics. This is what will destroy things altogether. And the same thing if, hey, I need to talk to my spouse about it. Hey, I totally understand wanting to talk to your spouse. Well, like, when should I check back with you after you have that conversation? Okay, that sounds perfect, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner. Now, if your spouse ends up saying no, I guess, what do you think they would be saying no to? The price, the terms, the time frame? Like, what specifically do you think they'd be saying no to? And then again, you have to be quiet. You have to shut your mouth. You have to be in the moment with them and just wait until they give you the true objection. And a lot of this, it's a sales scenario. So when anyone is in sales scenarios, they are generally a lot more protected than in an open conversation. Now, the approach that I take is you want to be friendly. You don't, like, of course, if you buy the house, great. If you don't buy the house, so be it. Can't do too much about that. But how I always approach things is, hey, we're here to provide you a resource. We're a consultative, or we have a consultative approach to sales or home buying or wholesaling, real estate, or whatever the case is. We're just going to inform. You could ultimately make the final decision on what you want to go or what route you want to go. Ideally, it would be with us, but if it's not with us, I totally understand that as well. That is the simple pitch that I always tell homeowners because I don't know if we can help. And when you're trying to force a price onto someone or you're trying to make them make a decision on the spot or whatever the case is, chances are you're going to burn that relationship. And from here on forward, they're not going to trust you. And once you lose trust with a homeowner, like everything flies out the door. Chances are you will probably not be able to get them back on the phone or they won't respond to text or whatever the case is. So you want to try and be as transparent as possible. And some people just aren't ready to make a decision yet. They want to gather information. They want to gather intel, which the more you can help with that, the better. It is a house. It's not like they're buying a vehicle or they're buying some sort of small dollar amount item. A house is generally the largest investment anyone will ever make. And the thought pattern of, hey, these people are going to make a decision in the next 5 hours will only fit a fraction of the population. For most people, they are not right or they're not quite ready to do that. Now, through proper marketing channels, through proper follow-up, you will convert a lot of individuals. But for right now, do not try to force a sale on someone who is not quite ready to sell. And this can be, of course, uncovered through the follow-up process, through conversations you have with the owners if you're at the job site or if you're at the property site or you go out for a home visit or whatever. Over the phone, it might be a little bit more difficult. You might need to hone the craft a little bit. I would highly, highly recommend recording those calls because I think that is a valuable skill to reflect on things, learn and grow as an individual. And I've even lately, as we work on pitching novations and a little bit more creative strategies, I've been recording those calls for ourselves because I want to watch them back. I want to reflect, okay, I said this here. It sounded like I didn't address the owner's skepticism on this side of things. And that's where, like, the novation pitch, if you guys are still listening, if you're still watching to this, the novation pitch is quite simple. So it's like how I always bring it up is, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, for a cash offer, we're probably going to be at this price. Now, if that's a little bit too low, which I would totally understand, we have something called our equity protection program. I don't know, like, do you want me to tell you a little bit more about that? Sure. Okay, so with that, I guess the first question I have to ask is, if you got the price that you're looking for, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, would you care who ends up buying the place? Chances are they're going to say no. Perfect. Well, then our equity protection program might be a good fit. Now, the caveats to this is it might not be as quick. We do have to have reasonable access to the property, and we are bringing it to the open market. So we partner with our retail buyers, retail investors in order to get the most amount of exposure. But still, on your side of things, it's an as-is sale. You don't need to worry about paying real estate commissions. You don't need to worry about repairing the place. We can handle all of that and honestly make it a very, very simple transaction. So if you want to hear more about that, I'm more than willing to dive into any details that you have. But I truthfully think that the equity protection program, I think that's probably the best route to go in order to get the dollar amount that you're looking for. And I'm quite confident on our side of things that we wouldn't have any issue making that come to fruition. And then you can kind of go in for the close or address any skepticism or questions that they might have at that point. But that is as simple as it is with the novation pitch. Now, I'm not calling it a novation. I'm calling it the equity protection program. I'm not telling them that, like, you're interchanging, you're not leaving out what you're planning on doing, but you're interchanging words so that it doesn't freak them out. So instead of saying, hey, I'm going to list this on the MLS with a realtor, hey, we're going to bring it to the open market and market to our retail buyers, retail investors. That sounds a hell of a lot better. Now, instead of saying, hey, we need to schedule showings on your property, we're going to need reasonable access in order to get as many buyers in there as possible. Now, we will, of course, coordinate things with you, but just so you have the expectation up front. And then it kind of goes into, of course, it's an as-is sale. You don't have to worry about that, so on and so forth. And you can handle a lot of stuff because most homeowners, they just don't want to deal with the headache of listing house, real estate agents, can be terrible depending upon the agent. It can be a miserable experience. And I don't wish that upon anyone, especially a homeowner who might be in a more desperate scenario. And then the last thing that I left out with the novation is we need a little bit more flexible time frame. So if this is something that you're looking to get done in the next 30 days, I probably wouldn't recommend going that route. But if you have a little bit of extra time and the little bit of extra time is worth the $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 more, I think this is probably the best route for you to go. And it would make the most sense. And then you can utilize your sales skills, address any skepticism, as I mentioned previously, and hopefully get the deal closed. Now, the other things that I want to present in this video, then we'll wrap it up here. We'll keep this short, is the fact that whenever you are in a sales scenario, whenever you're in a sales situation, people can tell when you are desperate for the sale. So the worst thing that you can do is, as a new investor, as a new wholesaler, as a new fix and flipper rental property investor, is you almost turn the conversation into a realm of, like, you get so upset. Like the homeowner tells you something and then you have a very reactive mindset to things. And with that reactive mindset, what eventually happens is it creates this doubt and uncertainty in the homeowner's mind. They start to lack trust in your efforts and your abilities to purchase their property because you seem desperate. They can sense this. They can sense you want to buy the place, and it ultimately gives them the upper hand in negotiations. And the most important thing I've learned throughout time with negotiations is the less that you care if you get the property or not saying that you don't care about the transaction itself, but the less that you care about if you buy this deal or the next deal or whatever the case is, the more opportunity will present itself in negotiations. Because a homeowner or any sort of individual in a sales scenario will be able to understand that. Like, it's like, hey, if you don't buy this, then so be it. Or if you don't sell your house to us, hey, we have another house that we're looking at right now. So it doesn't really matter. And then it allows you to negotiate a deeper discount and ultimately buy the property on the terms that you are actually looking for. Versus on the other hand, if you're like, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Owner, you keep hammering them with calls, text messages, emails, letters, whatever the case is, eventually they're like, holy crap, like, am I the only person that this guy is reaching out to? Like, he's reaching out to me 5 times a day. He's texting me all the time. Like you get annoyed. Like anyone who has been through a sales scenario where the salesperson is pestering them just gets so frustrated, just so fed up with everything that's going on that they completely avoid it altogether. So I don't know, that's just kind of a little bit of food for thought with you guys here on this Tuesday. Hopefully you enjoyed the show. We have an amazing podcast coming up here on Friday. 2 absolute powerhouses in the Valley area. So I'd highly encourage you to watch that. We're going over how Mike is buying deals across the country, how Greg is growing a incredible real estate brokerage, and they're doing insane amounts of volume. So stay tuned, hit the like and subscribe button if you enjoyed this show. Drop a comment down below if you need any other scripting questions answered. I would love to do more of these solo podcasts, and I will plan on seeing you guys in the next one.